Hello, everybody. Mariner here. How are you all doing? Welcome to Net That Haul and the 5th show of the 21-22 pre-season, where we're going to get into the nitty-gritty now and start diving into more detail. As always, we're joined by my band of merry men, our fellow Robin Hoods, crewmates, whatever you want to call them, minus one, who was last seen or heard of, apparently, sipping cider on a balcony in the sun. Hibbo's not. So Hibbo's here. Gabe's here. But Nima. Nima's on his honeymoon, so we'll let him off this week. How are you doing, boys?
Doing well over here. How you doing, Hibbo? Hey, to another cracking start.
Another cracking start to Net That Haul. Hibbo has frozen. Right, anyway, so let's carry on. Whilst he appears, I'm having some
network issues here, I think.
Well, just carry on. You should be all right. Just go out and come back in if you want. I'll let you back in. Let me
carry on when you get back.
Right. Anyway, let's keep going whilst he's messing around. So, crikey, it's going to be a disaster. I can just sense it. Just a few announcements anyway, and to remind you all, we're very happy to be supporting charities. So please do hit that like and subscribe button and become a hauler. And to remind you, once we get to 1,000, and we're not a million miles away from that now, we are going to donate to charity. And when we get 2,000, we're going to give some more. So it costs you nothing, but it costs us something. So hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well, become a hauler, and ultimately charity benefits. And also, what I'd like to say today is that if you've got a suggestion for a charity that we might want to consider, please put it in the comments, because we are bouncing this around internally within Net That Haul. But if you've got any ideas, do let us know. And don't forget, we are a pod, and we've just hit 1,500 downloads. So thank you very much. If you are listening to this, we are delighted with that. There's lots of people still working from home. There's lots of people now starting to get back on the daily grind. So do pick it up and listen to it. But of course, if you want to get the visual side of things, do come to YouTube. And also, finally, please take 1 minute of your time to vote for Net That Haul in the Football Content Awards. You can do this by either voting on the Football Content Awards website, on Twitter using the pre-made tweets, or on Instagram by tagging our handle at Net That Haul into the two posts directly. And all the links for this will be in the comments below and also in the pods. And whilst you're into Instagram, do give us a follow, because the stuff that Hibbo is designing is first class. Even though I go onto his system and ruin it all, because the dinosaur here completely wrecked all his stuff yesterday when I was trying to do something myself. So thank you for that, Hibbo, and I do apologise. I even thought I was going to apologise on air.
No, there's no need to apologise. Like, it was very minor, and I think we'll give you a crash course in how to use Canva, and I think you'll be up to speed soon.
I'm a bloody dinosaur, mate. Honest.
Oh,
total dinosaur. It's good to hear you. It's good to hear your dulcet tones now. It's working anyway.
I was having a bit of a network issue for some reason there, so I've just changed my router, so it seems to be okay now.
Right. Okay. Well, good that you're with us anyway. And also, and finally, the last of the announcements: do join the mini league. Code is FG1XNB. Links again in the comments in YouTube. And try and beat the gang. The league's growing nicely. To remind you, we've got a book from Matt Whelan. That's at FPL_obsessed as a prize. You can sign it for your wish, unless you want it electronically. And also, Fantasy Football Fixed have offered a 1-year subscription as a prize too. So thanks to them. I've even got some mugs designed for Net That Haul. I was going to show you it and say, here's our mug being held up by a mug. But unfortunately, they haven't arrived. So I'll have to do it next week. But yeah, if you do want to join our mini league, please do, and we will give you a shout out every week if you're in the top 3. All right then, so let's crack on. So we've already spoken about fixture difficulty, guys. We've talked about rotation. We've talked about the challenges of change and the effects of fans in the ground, among other things. So this week, Gabe's going to start with, I think, is it 5 teams, Gabe? Very, very quick look. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at just the chat. I think the chat is just starting to heat up a little bit.
Oh, fine. You carry on with that. I'm just going to carry on just doing this.
I apologize for the interruption, but yes, 5 teams.
I'll look at the chat when you're talking. I'll look at the chat when you're talking. So you're going to look at 5 teams, and then Hibbo and I, with Gabe's input, are going to get to grips with goalkeepers and defensive assets and point you in the direction of some value picks, some on-field stats or production picks, as I'm going to call them, and fixture picks. Okay, and then don't forget the other 4 shows are still very, very valid. They're in little bite-sized chunks, so do go back and check the content before, particularly on the fixture difficulty, because, of course, I'm not going to go right through it again because we're pressed for time. So we're going to need to refer back to previous shows. But first, and this is a new little section, and this is very much because of last week, and we have a resident philosopher on the show, and we've decided that we are going to do and it is 2 minutes, Gabe, a 2-minute FPL lens philosophy of the week. And your philosophy this week, my friend, is this: spoon feeding in the long run teaches nothing but the shape of the spoon. Please apply that to FPL in 2 minutes.
In 2 minutes. Where's my timer?
It started.
Oh, it's already started. So several things come to mind for me with this quote, right? And actually, the first thing that came to mind surprised me because it was the old saying, "You are what you eat." And I find that to be true on many levels. So we consume information for FPL, we consume entertainment for FPL and for other things, and all of these things kind of get filtered through like who we are and what our personality is. But if it doesn't get filtered through who we are, we just become these external forces, and we lose really like a sense of who we are and our identity, and that's actually really damaging. And when that happens in FPL, that's when people start to lose interest in FPL, or it affects their mental health. But it is that loss of identity because the shape that you are in, you don't recognize because it's not your own. So this is saying that everything you consume needs to be applied through the filters of your identity, what you identify with and who you are. If it doesn't, then you are not you.
I think it's a very topical point at the minute because I know Fix have launched a new function within the site where they're going to post elite managers, like an elite 11, their transfers planned for the week and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And like the team reveal I know it's very prevalent in the community, like, people paying money for team reveals and stuff like that. I can only say my own perspective. It's never really been my way of playing FPL. As far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't be playing the game if I copied somebody else's transfer. So I think this spoon feeding point, like, it's relevant to that. It might be for casual players that I wouldn't take any enjoyment out of it, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, the way I apply it is from the basis of what our content as well. You know my view on this. I'm not a spoon feeder. All I do when I put content out is I put content out to generate thought process and things like that. My numbers are my numbers. If you like them, great. If you don't like them, challenge them. If you think it's not right, challenge it. But numbers are numbers. But numbers are just one tiny part of it. So don't. That's my perspective of this spoon feeding scenario. So no, I thought that was a perfect one. So I hope you enjoyed that, guys, because we're going to do one every week on the matchup show. And Gabe's going to be challenged in coming up with something relevant to the game week, either coming or just gone.
That's right. A general kind of ethos from the game week will be converted into a 2-minute philosophy bit every week.
Yeah, it's more likely to be something from the previous week because you don't predict anything, do you, Sleepy Joe?
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that because predictions, right? That isn't my thing, and I'll never do that. So that's something that I will stay true to. True to.
Okay, right. So very quickly before we crack on, let's just say hello to a few people. We've got Astralicious in. Hello, Simeon. How are you doing? Bungle's here. Adam, John Chappell. How are you doing, man? Crazy dude. Dan at the FPL way. Hello, mate. Ramanthan. Hi, man. Ray. Who else have we got? I'm just looking down the list. FPL Sav. Jamie's here. Who's this Sean Jackson? Oh, I know who it is. It's Hibbo. Bungle, as we said, Bungle before, he's got a second shout out because he's from Tokyo. Hope you're enjoying the Olympics, mate. Jared is in as well. We've got Carlo. There's some new names here. FPL Escapades. How are you doing, lads? Are you all right? Fadil is here as well. Niels is here. And I think that's as far as we can get so far. So, there we go.
Just a quick point. We've got 26 people, I think, watching live now at the minute, and we only have 15 likes on the stream on YouTube. So look, everybody get in and smash a like button and get us up this algorithm a bit.
Algorithms.
Yes, do that. Yeah, because it's working really well at the moment. So
the game is all about algorithm.
Just like my FPL.
Algorithm.
Right, come on, let's go. Gabe, we're going to come to you first for a change this week. And we're going to do these little team matchups first for 15 minutes or so. And then we'll dive into the goalkeepers and crack on from there. So let me put your screen up, and there you go. The floor's yours.
Okay, so let me just preface this a little bit. This is the first installments of a preseason FPL matchups. So the difference between preseason matchups and in-season matchups is in-season matchups, I'm looking at very much current data, kind of what I'm seeing every weekend that I watch the game. The preseason matchups is what I do is I scroll through. I have like 6 to 8 different tables that I use, and I scroll through this data, and things pop out to me. There are certain outliers, and from those outliers, I build kind of this narrative. So it's very much stats heavy. So bear with me, and I have them for the most part separated into attack and defense. If I don't have much on one team or another, it's probably because their stats are like within kind of like middle of the pack all the way across. Nothing sticks out. So bottom of the table, 17th place, we start with Burnley. Burnley's attack. So this is funny. They had the 6th most crosses, 772, yet they had the 5th lowest cross completion, 19.7%. So I don't know, if you're doing something and you're not very good at it, maybe you should find something you're good at. Burnley's one of 8 teams whose pass percentage improved in the final third. It was the 2nd best improvement of those 8 with 4.4%. What I'm seeing there is, when you have a team that doesn't pass much in the final third and that plays very direct, that's where the pass percentage can go up. They also had the most unsuccessful passes last season, which made me laugh. And unsurprisingly, the fewest assists of non-relegated teams. They only had 20 assists last season. Again, that's another stat that you could ridicule Burnley for, but it could also speak to style of play. When you play with a kind of like a target like Chris Wood, and then he's expected to maybe beat a couple of defenders. Maybe it's more on him than I don't know how many headed goals he had last season. I know Chris Wood scored 13 goals last season, but I think he had to create many of those himself. In defense, no surprise here. Burnley blocked the most shots last season. They had 180 blocks, which was 20 more than the next most. The next most, if I remember correctly, was Everton, but we'll get to that in next episode. Burnley had an XGA of 55.56 last season, or that would be XGC, expected goals conceded, 55.56. But their expected goals on target conceded was only 49.3. So that delta is a 6.6. So when there's a shot on target, Burnley took away last season 6.26 XG from that. That's probably because of those, a lot because of Nick Pope and those blocks as well. Burnley conceded more chances than any other team, including relegated teams, which is kind of a pretty shocking stat there. And that's really the source of their problems. It's just in the number of chances they concede. This is how most of their chances they conceded occurred. They had the 5th most headed goal attempts conceded with 91, the 3rd most chances conceded from the right side, 141, the 2nd most chances conceded from the center, 167, and the most chances conceded from the left, 146. Next. Why can't I get to the next slide? Sorry.
Gabe, just very quickly, is it possible you can switch your screen over? Because I think you're showing your note page.
Oops. How's that? Any better?
It's not come through yet, but I'm sure it will in a second. No, hang on, you've disappeared now. We've lost you completely. Keep talking.
Sorry. Any comments or anything about Burnley? I don't know.
Well, there was only
highlight any players.
Can we just write off Burnley data from last season? from FPL Sav. I mean, the thing was that Burnley were at one stage they were Burnley, and then they changed into Barcelona, didn't they?
Right. So that change came from, let's see. Okay. That change came from the inclusion of your good friend, Mr. Vidra. And what happened is Burnley started pressing with Vidra, and Vidra is obviously more mobile. That pressure led to a lot of counterattacks. One thing I will say with Burnley is I think Loughton, is it Loughton or is it Loughton? Can somebody?
I would say Loughton, but people always correct everybody how we pronounce players anyway. So,
well, whatever it is, I think he's somebody to perhaps put on the watch list if Burnley revert to their more defensive selves. Like we don't know what Burnley's going to show up. Are they going to continue to press like that and maybe leave themselves a little bit open in the back, or are they going to solidify their back line, maybe revert to what they, the team that got them into Europe? And if they do that, if they revert to the team that got them into Europe, it diminishes Loughton's assist potential. But I think there could still be something there because he did have some decent stats toward the end of the season.
He's already assisted in pre-season as well, hasn't he?
I used to always go for Charlie Taylor, but
yeah,
obviously I got that wrong because Loughton, he scored an absolute screamer at one point last year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Maybe Burnley at home might be they're not great on stats actually for FTR at home, but at the same time, maybe Burnley at home might be a tougher nut to crack with fans. I always recommend going there. I've said this many times on the show. I've been up there on a cold Tuesday night watching Grimsby. I'll tell you what, it's intimidating.
I wrote that verbatim in the post, in the thread when I posted on Burnley, that a cold Tuesday night in Burnley is probably different with fans than without fans.
Definitely.
More. So, and that, who knows? We just have to see which way that's going to go.
Yeah, definitely.
So Mariner, for some reason, I can't move on to the next slide.
Oh, that's strange. You want to just keep talking about it then? Just talk about it whilst you get it moving, because it's your end, not me.
Yeah.
Excuse everybody. I know it's the first time you join on to Net that Hall, becoming a hauler. Part of the fun is everything goes wrong.
Everything goes wrong. All right, there we go.
If you get it work,
you can't see it anymore, right?
Just talk about it. People are listening anyway.
So, people are listening anyway. All right, that's true. And there aren't any graphics in this. It's statistically heavy. So we're going on to Brighton now. Brighton. So the appealing thing with Brighton, and I think why Brighton is a part of the conversation everywhere, is because in the first 8 game weeks, 5 of those matchups are Burnley, Watford, Brentford, Palace, and Norwich. And that's really, and then so we're taking those matchups. I think this is what I think we're doing. We're taking those matchups. We really like them, and we're forgetting something that Brighton always underperform their stats. This is a trend with them under Potter. They did it last season. I tweeted about this last offseason that Brighton should have been better than they were, and it happened again this past season. So I don't know. I'll go through the stats and then let everyone decide. They created the second most chances from the right side, with Manchester City and Liverpool, so the joint second most, with 140 chances from the right side. Only Chelsea created more. I found that really interesting. Those are like elite numbers there that in Manchester City and Liverpool's company. But what stands out to me for that stat is Tariq Lamptey, more than any of their attackers. That attacking stat makes me think of the defender. And they scored 40 goals last season, which was 11.46 less than their XG of 51.46. Only Fulham and Sheffield United had a worse XG delta. They should have scored, about 11 and a half goals more than they did. But that I don't see this as you could look at it two ways, right? You could look at it and say, well, that's quite promising because surely there's a positive regression here, or you can say like, well, it's the second year in the row they underperform the stats. Maybe they're just not very good. And that's obviously where I lean. Yeah, you guys have any thoughts on that, on Brighton?
Well, you're not a Danny Welbeck fan then, because at 6 million, Danny Welbeck has been in a couple of my drafts, although I'm not sure he's going to start. That's the problem. But Welbeck's form at the end of last season was pretty good.
It's true. It was pretty good. I'm not a fan of Danny Welbeck. I'm not a fan of. I like watching him for some reason. There's something very likable about him, but I don't think he's very good.
I'd like to make a quick point here. I think it's interesting that you say about the attacks coming down the right-hand side. And like we know, Lamptey, I think he started 11 games last season. But like his replacement wasn't bad either, Veltman, so that kind of explains that. The right-hand side's good and it bodes well for Lamptey this season. In terms of underperforming the XG, Maupay is basically a disgrace as far as strikers go. Now, nobody else. Like he's the complete definition of all fart no shit. And Brighton at the minute are linked with Odsonne Edouard from Celtic, and I'm a Celtic fan, obviously. It would be really interesting because I have no faith in Welbeck as an option, but I think it would be really interesting if they went out and got Edouard, because he's got bags of ability, he can finish, and if he went there, I would imagine he'd be priced at about 6 million, so maybe an option.
That's a great shout.
They did provide the bullets, but they didn't have a finisher. Basically
exactly. It's true. Brighton didn't have a finisher, but to back up what you just said about the right side and Veltman was fine on the right side. He is a little bigger and less mobile than Lamptey. Obviously, Lamptey can get up and down the wing more. But the other thing is that Brighton lost Solly March, and Solly March was their attack from the left hand side. If they can return to some of that, they could be interesting, because then it would be much less predictable.
Well, interesting. We will be talking about Lamptey a little bit later, and I dare say players like Trossard will come up in weeks to come as we go towards the midfielders as well. But yeah, interesting points. So cool.
So I actually have more on Brighton, because Brighton are very strange. They have these elite stats, and then they were 16th. So it's a bizarre case. So I wrote about Brighton back in January in a matchups column back in January. So I pulled that back up, and there are 4 reasons for defensive production that I found back then. And one, Brighton had conceded the most penalty kicks in January. They had conceded 6. Since then, they only conceded 1 more. So maybe that's they've figured something out regarding defending in the box. And defending in the box is kind of a theme. There's something else here that I'll mention regarding defending in the box. That they had Brighton they received the most red cards last season. 6, more than any other team. And I think that's also like a bit of an indictment on the way they defend, and that they defend that the system is good, but the individuals may not be so good. They had 2 own goals, but the own goals were when you watch them, it's just mistakes. It's you could see the own goals coming. I remember one where Sanchez, where the ball was kicked from the left-hand side of the box and it was deflected. Kind of right when the ball was kicked, it was deflected, and it took Sanchez an eternity to react to that deflection. So all the defenders are kind of boxing out attackers that are going into the box, and I think it was Dunk that was standing there, and Sanchez at the last minute somewhat dives for it and slaps the ball into Dunk's shin and it goes in. Stuff like that. That one was up to poor goalkeeping, in my opinion. Speaking of poor goalkeeping, the fourth point is poor goalkeeping. So Matt Ryan was obviously just shocking the first 11 game weeks. He added 4.7 xG to the plays in 11 game weeks. That's basically adding 0.42 x, or his xG prevented was negative 0.42 per 90. So he added 0.42 of xG per 90 that he played in the first 11 game weeks. For comparison, Sancho comes in and he added 0.13 xG per 90. So his expected goals prevented was negative 0.13 per 90. It's still not good, but I mean, it wasn't hard to improve on Ryan there.
No, we're going to talk about keepers in a bit, but my description of Sanchez is he doesn't have to save much, and he doesn't save much of what he has to save.
I like that. I would hate to have to say that again. Say that twice. But
I'm not going to say it again. I've said it once, and I got it out right.
That's what you got. I like that. That's good. It's a tongue twister. All right. Next team. Any thoughts? Any final thoughts on Brighton before I move on to Southampton?
My personal view is, sorry, Hibbo, I'll just come in first. My personal view is there's quite a lot of moving parts for Brighton. There's a lot of teams like that. Brighton particularly, they've already lost White. Are they going to lose anyone else? Brighton's fixture difficulty for defence is very good indeed, but this could change quite quickly. So we have to keep an eye on what's happening. In my perspective, Hibbo, you don't like them, do you?
I'm a wee bit hot and cold, but what I'm going to say about Ben White is I think they're going to lose it in terms of interceptions and blocks. He ranked very highly individually for those. But if they go Veltman in terms of right-sided centre-back, Veltman's quite good at ball progression, so I don't think they're going to lose anything on the right-hand side in terms of the ball going down that way for Lamptey. So, I don't know. I think they could lose a bit in terms of clean sheet potential.
Okay.
All right, Southampton attack. Sorry. Sometimes when I read what I wrote, I laughed at the way I wrote it. So that they created the fifth fewest chances from the left and the fourth fewest chances from the right. So obviously they'd like to go down the middle, but even down the middle, they only created 114 chances compared to 95 from the left and 85 from the right. And that's only good for ninth best. So very much bottom of the table for chances created. And, will Ings stay? Definitely keep an eye on that. From an attacking perspective, I find it hard to find anything in this team to really be excited about or even be concerned about. I really have a hard time finding anything in this team from an attack. In defense, they had the highest expected goals conceded delta by far. So Brighton was second with 10.14. They conceded 10.14 more goals than expected. Well, Southampton conceded 14.6 more goals than expected. Well, if we're looking at the XG on target conceded, its numbers are a little bit better. The delta for the XG on target conceded is 11.2. So just to explain that really quickly, if this is the first time you're hearing XG on target, so where XG is a pre-shot model before the shot is taken, that's what the value indicates. After the shot is taken is if the shot is on target, then there's an expected goals of that play once the shot is on target. So for shots on target, they were a little better, but still very much underperforming. Despite having the second most unsuccessful passes this season, 3,663. They allowed the second fewest chances from counterattacks, which I found interesting, because you think if you're having a lot of unsuccessful passes that you would be vulnerable to counterattacks, but they only allowed 7 chances from counterattacks, and they had the joint fewest errors leading to a chance in 6, which I wouldn't caught me by surprise. I wouldn't have expected that. I thought Southampton would maybe committed more errors than that. They conceded the 4th most penalty kicks. They conceded 9. But where they are really weak is on the right-hand side. They conceded 128 chances from the right-hand side, compared to 99 from the left and 89 from the center. So that right-hand side, from which they obviously like to attack as well. I believe that's a Kyle Walker-Peters on that side. They like to get forward with him. Perhaps in that space, that's where they were getting hit. The other thing that I'll say is they had injuries to both their defensive midfielders. So these stats, they could be a little bit misleading. They could be a little more solid in there if they can maintain health in that area. The Southampton's kind of like their big weakness was that 27% of the chances they conceded were big chances. So when they concede a chance, it's oftentimes a big chance. They conceded 85 big chances over the season. Any thoughts on Southampton, fellas?
Honestly, it's a team I don't think I've got anywhere near anyone in any of my drafts so far, apart from Obafemi as a 4.5 million junk.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only place I've gone. For me, and I'll come on to, I've already started to crunch numbers for midfielders. Ward-Prowse for me does nothing for me. There's better value at that. There's much better value, I think, at that price point. The defense is bad. We don't even, goalkeeper-wise, as I say, is right down at the bottom of the rankings from my perspective. I'll show you that in a few minutes. But no, I just think it's they're a solid avoid for me, particularly if Ings goes.
And I know last season their goalkeepers rotated, and there's talk at the minute that Fraser Forster might go back to Celtic. So he'd be out of the mix, but do we want McCarthy as a 4.5? No.
Not with that defence.
He makes a lot of saves, in fairness to him, and he can potentially haul because he does make those saves. And it's a team where nobody else is really hoovering up bonus, but they don't keep clean sheets. So
for me, it's a good job he makes saves.
They are probably a hard avoid for me in terms of I think he could play the season and not own a Southampton option. And you could maybe get suckered into a double game week and end up buying them and be stuck with them and hit yourself.
There was mention of Kyle Walker-Peters. John Chappell in the chats mentioned Kyle Walker-Peters. I owned Kyle Walker-Peters for quite a while last season, but to be honest with you, that was for possible. He was getting quite well. He was getting the odd return here and there. But to me, their numbers, their underlying numbers are just horrible. So for me, it's an avoid.
From one avoid team to another avoid team. Palace.
Right, next.
Let's
save some time in the pod. Should we just ignore them? Or shall we just very briefly cover them?
I'll just mention a couple of highlights. I'm not really going to cover them. I won't go too much into them.
To be fair, Gabe, we spoke about them at length last week as well.
Okay, yeah. How many through balls do you think Palace made completed last season?
Conceded? Oh, God.
No, completed.
Not many.
8.
That's actually surprising.
I thought it was 7.
None.
Obviously, we know they were a big target in the former Souček watch. Always, target Palace. So headed chances. Definitely target Palace for headed chances. And the last thing I'll say about Palace is one of only 2 teams with no own goals last season. So that's
good then. I mean, look, as we've said, they're a wait. They're a watch and wait. There's a little bit of hope from from the lads who did the work for us as fans last week. But at the same time, I think they're also saying, look, just let's watch and wait for now. Benteke is the one player. If they do start to show something for me, Benteke's numbers are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think the new signing, Elise, I think that's his name, Michael Elise from Reading.
Yes.
He's been talked about as a bit of an option. Now, I know Eze's injured. We talked about that last week, and they've got Zaha. You would think if they had those three boys in the kind of attacking side, they might be decent to watch, but pass wouldn't be for me.
No. And again, you know, as I've been saying, I've been banging on about this for a while now. It doesn't always happen, but defence is 66% tougher in the Premier League than the Championship, according to 538's numbers. So, you know, you can't expect this production. Everyone's saying, oh, look at all this, look at all this. You can't expect this production when they come up. You know, it's very rare that they do. Bamford was one of the exceptions.
Lastly, here we have Wolves. Again, there's not much to talk about Wolves, so I'll keep this one under a minute. Something that stood out: second fewest unsuccessful passes. Obviously, Man City had less, but that's because they don't really pass the ball forward very much. They had the 8th fewest through balls with 20 on the season. They did have the joint most dribbles last season, which I thought was interesting. They're, you know, a team that gets the ball to the wingers or whatever and dribble up the wing. So, and I think what that leads to, you see teams with oftentimes teams with a lot of dribbles, they'll have attempts from set pieces. So they had the 4th most attempts from set pieces with 133 last season. Team that likes to cross the ball, 2nd most crosses from open play with 580. And the 2nd most chances from counterattacks with 24. Now, we mentioned all of these stats, and do we think really Bruno Lage, thanks for the correct pronunciation last week, Mariner, that was well done. Bruno Lage.
It was a guess.
It was a guess. You guessed right. You know, is he going to play this counterattacking style, right? And the team is built to play that way, so it may take some time to develop into Lage's system. And then from a defensive perspective, I mean, we all witnessed those awful games. The fewest number of pressures in the final third, 903. 70 fewer than the next team. They had 70 fewer pressures in the final third than the next team. They were kind of brutal to watch in that respect. And then the one thing I'll question is, this is a defense that wasn't able to master a back four under Nuno. When Nuno tried to switch to a back four, they really suffered defensively. And Bruno Lage is gonna make them play in a back four. So just there's questions of how that's gonna work out. Yeah.
To be honest with you, I have started to tinker with Ait Nouri as a 4.5 defender to come in after game week 3. I know not everybody likes that idea, but I'm looking at a longer term team. It's a bit of a gamble, but it does strike me as a bit peak vinegar, as I put it. So it's a bit peak vinegar like last year. So I may well cool from that before too long, but he has sneaked into my thoughts, to be fair.
If a manager is considering Ait Nouri, I would question how many 4-5 defenders do they have on their team, and what is the opportunity cost in having extra 4.5s when there are quite seemingly kind of attractive players from a value perspective in terms of other defenders. And that's a good segue onto the next section,
which is where we're going to come on to that in a moment.
There we go.
Hibbo, anything on Wolves before we move on?
I don't know. Like, I tend to agree about the whole kind of peak vinegar thing. You know, see our game week 1 teams, I don't think we want to be gambling too much. Now, you're talking about maybe forecasting down the line to say game week 4 or whatever. I don't think we want to be gambling too much in our game week 1 teams. And for me, he's maybe still a gamble. I don't really know if I want to go there myself. I think I would rather try and be solid to start and build on it. Mm-hmm. If he looks good, you can always bring him on.
Fair enough. Oh, fair point. Gabe, thank you very much. Nice section. And we'll cover another 4 next week, I think, is it?
That's right.
Slowly going up to teams of interest.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. How many people we lose? How many people fall asleep?
No, actually, we're gaining listeners, so it's fine.
Oh,
and remember, if you are listening to this, and obviously if you're new to it, we are very, very keen on doing this in sections. We know that our shows are long. They're long because they're detailed. So take this in a little bite-sized dose. Come and grab a coffee, listen to a bit, go off and pack some boxes like I'm doing, as you can see behind me, and then watch a bit more. But no, it's fabulous. I enjoyed that. Thank you, Gabe. Right, I'm just going to exercise my vocal cords for a second. I'm just going to put a little message up, and then we'll crack on. Are you craving more FPL content? Then look no further than allaboutfpl.com. Head over there for weekly articles from some of the top content creators on the planet. So what are you waiting for? Head over to allaboutfpl.com, the website for all your FPL needs. Okay, guys, right, let me add this to the screen. So first of all, we're going to go into defenders and goalkeepers. But first things first, we always start with fixture difficulty, but I'm going to cover it in about 5 minutes because we need to go back to show 2 of this pre-season where we cover fixture difficulty in detail. But the first thing to say is that we don't know quite often how other people's fixture difficulties work. Oh, heck, who was that? but we can explain how ours does. And remember the term about spoon feeding. So this is my take. And, you know, other people have come. Frazier's come up with an idea for his fixture difficulty. I'm trying to think, Gabe, who else has? There's been a few people since we did that show who have actually been enthused sufficiently to be able to make their own fixture difficulty calculations up. I think that's marvelous. So, yeah. So anyway, on the screen, it tells you how my fixture difficulty works. Just to remind you, it's matchups attacks against defense or defensive against attack. It takes into account 2019-20 season when fans were in the ground. Old data from Norwich and Watford carried through, for example. 2020-21 with no fans, full season. And for that, we compared Brentford, for example. We took championship data and then compared it against Norwich and Watford in there. And then obviously 2020-21, the last 6 in the Premier League with some fans. We look at XG against XGC over 90 minutes. We look at big chances against big chances conceded over 90 minutes, shots in box and headers against conceded. We rate them 0 to 7, which fits into Ben Krellin's spreadsheet. Mine's just landed. Thank you, Ben. And then we look at a delta between attack and defense or vice versa. A positive number is good for a matchup. A negative number is bad. Green is good. Dark green is better. Red is bad. Dark red is horrible. I could have said dark red is Crystal Palace or Southampton. So, right, let's keep going. So that's the fixture difficulty for game week 1 for defence. Manchester City top 1.2, Brighton 1, Man United 0.9, Chelsea 0.8, Leicester 0.3 in 5th, Liverpool, Spurs, Everton, Arsenal, Wolves. Then we get then a few. I'm going to read up from the bottom. Southampton, Norwich, Palace. So Southampton minus 1.9, Norwich minus 1.8, Palace minus 1.4, Leeds minus 1.2, Newcastle minus 0.9. Okay, so there we go. This is the sort of matchups for defence in game week 1. So it just gives you an indication of where we are. Right, let's now look at the fixture difficulties. Okay, and again, the way this works is what we're trying to do is we're trying to show you where the good fixtures are. And again, go back to game week 2. So game week 2.
That would be forward. Forward.
Go back to show 2 and you'll see more about this. But this is what the sort of stuff that we're going to show every week. But let's cut to the chase. Let's look at what we think are the best options for game week 1 to 5 with respect to defence. And the teams that we came up with in show 2 were Manchester City, Brighton, Manchester United, Chelsea, and Leicester. They were the 5 teams that we pulled out. And we also punted on Arsenal. And since then, I have now added Liverpool into that list of teams of extreme interest, shall we say, for the first 5 game weeks. Why have I included Liverpool? Because Liverpool's attacking numbers are just so good. So I'm talking about these potentials for these elusive double returns, possibility of a clean sheet, and also that possibility of that attacking return. So you know which 2 players I'm talking about here. I'm talking about Trent and I'm talking about Robbo. And of course, and Hibbo, you're doing something on them later, so we won't talk about them too much now.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Any further views on the teams here, guys? Am I missing a trick with, say, West Ham are not treated very favourably. I know a lot of people like Kufal. Also, Everton, mid-table. People are talking about Everton as well.
I think the fixtures are decent enough for both West Ham and Everton. Like, you know, at the same time, we don't really. I seen a quote during the week from Benitez I thought was kind of interesting, where he was talking about the style of football that he's potentially going to play, and he says, "Oh, if we're going to play beautiful football, that's great, but sometimes we might just have to win the game." And I thought, well, this is what Benitez is maybe going to do. It's going to be like just anti-football. So I think it maybe bodes well for Everton assets in that case.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. And of course, Villa were a very popular defensive team last season. But remember, my fixture difficulty takes into account the last few game weeks, and Villa weren't particularly good then defensively.
Can I just say really quickly on Everton? Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, of course. Yes.
The one thing I'll say, if they are more solid defensively, if Rafa is going to come in and you know play anti-football, then does that limit Dean's attacking potential? But are we assuming Dean is on maybe set pieces when he might not be with the new manager? I think we have to be careful of our assumptions with Everton.
There's a lot happening at Everton, to be fair, isn't there? Yeah. So I think again, there's lots of things will become clearer as we get closer to the season. But yeah, you make a good point. Dean's of interest, actually. We'll talk about him in a bit.
Please be careful what you say about Everton, Marner.
I haven't been very careful about Everton. Don't worry about that.
Don't worry about that.
We don't want any kind of legal action against Ned that Hall, because none of us have any fucking money to pay for it.
Don't worry about that, man. No, don't worry. We already had a debate. We already set the rules pre-show. Anyway, right, let's keep going before we do drop ourselves in the shit.
Yeah. Moving on.
So that's the fixture difficulty. So there we go. My shortlisted teams are Manchester City, Brighton, Manchester United, Chelsea, Leicester, and I have also shortlisted Arsenal and Liverpool. But of course, that doesn't mean to say that there aren't great assets elsewhere, and that is just my perspective. Okay, that's it. My perspective. Right. Okay, so before we move on to the goalkeepers, I'm just going to very quickly just give us a bit of an announcement. And as I say, #ad. I just want to remind you that we do have a collaboration between Net That Hall and Fantasy Football Fix. We've all been using the site. Hibbo's just mentioned something about them earlier on about this Elite 11. I'm not sure I will use that personally, but I like their pre-season stuff a lot. And again, if you go back to the very, very well-received structure section of the show earlier in the pre-season, that just shows you the power of that and how nicely it works. So yes, if you would like to sign up, there will be a link in the comments below. Whilst you're there, hit the like button, of course, and subscribe if you don't already. But if you do, you get a 65% discount off their standard pricing and a free pre-season guide, I think worth a tenner. So yeah, use artificial intelligence to improve your FPL rank. That's if you don't want to use ours. If you don't believe ours, believe a bot.
Well, one thing that I'll say that I like about a kind of conglomerate team reveal or 11 that comes from several different managers is that you can use it as almost like a control group and just a baseline to bounce your thinking off of. I think it could be useful.
No, I think it's never a harm to do that, but I think as you mentioned earlier on, Hibbo, you're not the sort of person who you don't copy. You like to do your own thing. You like to have your own thought process and this, that, and the other. But no, I mean, to be fair, I think they're very clever.
Can't disagree.
No. Okay, so that's that. So yeah, if you'd like to subscribe, please do. Net That Haul will channel the money back into the running of the show, and any spare money that we do make from anything like this goes, guess where? It goes to charity. We don't make money in Net That Haul. We have no intention of. We just want to run the show for your enjoyment, and if charity benefits, then all the better. Okay, right. Let's move on. So now we're going to get into goalkeepers, and I'm just going to try and keep this to as, should we say, as short a debate as possible. And the simplest thing to do here, and what I've done is I've created a goalkeeper rating as such. Now, the great detail of this is on Twitter. So if you follow me on Twitter, go and find that thread, and all the nitty-gritty behind this power rating table, which you can see on the screen, is in there. But what I'm going to do, I'm not going to give you specific numbers because they are in there. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about rankings. And I think that's the simplest way to look at these. And the rankings are on key statistics that I consider important. So things like clean sheets, percentage, saves from shots in the box over 90 minutes, expected goal prevented, bonus points, points in the last per 90 minutes over the season and over the last 6, and then my Valgorithm, try and put my teeth in, where what I'm doing is I've worked out the points per million for these players over extrapolating from the last 6 to a full season, and then considering the full season, and then ranking them by, should we say, by value. Okay, so if we look at this screen, then first of all, let's start at the very top. No great shakes, no great surprises, guys. Martinez comes out top of goalkeepers at 5.5. But of course, he's 5.5. So he is clear in rankings over Lloris and over Pope, which is his competition at that level. Again, do come to the show, do come to the YouTube for the clear details, and it's very, very clear. But look, let's just very quickly look down. Bonus points, he comes out top. Value comes out top. Points over the season, second per 90 minutes. Expected goals prevented, third comes out. No, I mean, there is no red in this. That he is consistently high on all the metrics. The challenge for us is, can we get to him price-wise? Guys, is Martinez in your thoughts?
Not really. I think his price seems a bit prohibitive. And like, if I'm talking about what I like to do with my goalkeepers, I tend to go for like a 4.5, 4.0. So I'm kind of like an 8.5 in terms of structure, goalkeeper man. Now, like, I prepared a bit of something in this. So what I would tend to do, if possible, would be to try and pick the two of them from the one team. Now, what I would say about that is it gives you a bit of fallback in your option. If your goalkeeper gets injured, you're going to have a cover. We still have COVID around, so if somebody has to go on the isolation, you would still have cover. But what I will say is, in terms of goalkeepers, don't block yourself off and do this with players from a good team. Like I did it last year with Villa, so I had Martinez and the sub, I think, might have been Steele or somebody like that. And I ended up in a position where I couldn't buy Watkins. I already had Grealish, so that's something to bear in mind in terms of goalkeepers. Now, I read about something during the week. Now, he's might know him. He's a bit marmite, trigger lips. He posts on Twitter. He made a good point in one of his articles. He said in one of his articles that going for 4.5 goalkeepers isn't a bad option because it gives you 2 bites at the cherry at getting the right 4.5 keeper. And I thought it was very interesting because you could maybe go like, we're looking at, say, Sanchez and Backman. Maybe Backman's going to turn out to be the value. It could save you a transfer down the line.
That's an interesting perspective.
I didn't really think of it that way because normally people think about 2 4.5s and they think, oh, well, I'm not on the rotation because myself, I'm not on the rotation, but it gives you 2 bites at the cherry of getting it right. And it maybe isn't going to force your hand with an early wild card. It's only going to cost you an extra 0.5 of value and it's going to give you a sub option over a 4.5, 4.0, say.
Very interesting because that's 9 million, right? And the next player that I'm going to talk about would still probably likely come up with a 9 million total for goalkeepers, which is Meslier, because he's the best value 5 million keeper, according to, or the best power rating 5 million keeper, according to this table. So let's look at Meslier. So clean sheets is ranked 5th, saves in the box ranked 2nd. Expected goals prevented only 10th. Bonus points 3. Points per 90 over the last 6, 9th. Not so great. Points per 90 over the season 7th. But value 2nd. So again, for me, I am currently on Meslier and with a 4.0 keeper. Gabe, what's your view on the 5 keepers? I'll just make a reference that Pickford is a way down, as is Leno, Fabianski, Schmeichel, Henderson and De Gea compared to Meslier.
So I think this is it's an interesting group, especially Pickford has good, seemingly good fixtures. I think Fabianski could be a sneaky pick at 5.0. Especially if Moyes comes out, somewhat conservatively to begin with, knowing that they need to, they can't go all they can't hit the ground running too hard. They can't, go balls to the wall when they have Europa League coming up. They're going to need to play a conservative style in order to make it. So, but Meslier. So what I'm looking at all these stats, and then the one that stands out to me is and this was mentioned, I believe, on it might have been, I forget which podcast. I think it was on The Wire, and then they were talking about rotating goalkeepers. So the bonus points, and the bonus points are so important for goalkeepers because when that was why Martinez was so good, right? Because when he would get a clean sheet, it was always 9 points, 10 points, 11 points, I think this was something Martinez taught me last season is to look more for that kind of added benefit this season, and so Meslier stands out as the 3rd best. For those, when he keeps a clean sheet, he'll most likely get some bonus points, and I want that extra. So I'd probably favor Meslier, but I would go back to the 4.5s and look at Dubravka if healthy, obviously.
Just want to cover Manchester United goalkeepers. Clearly, they're not treated very well in this power rankings, but that's because, for example, players like Henderson was bit part really during the season. My personal perspective is that I'm not sure that I would be looking at a Manchester United keeper because I think it might. Have you just done that? I think it might well affect my options to go for other Manchester United assets. But I do see the appeal in some senses as well for a 5. It seems like a gift horse you can't ignore. A 5 million Manchester United keeper. Hibbo, we maybe spoke about this in previous ones, but I think
I think it depends what we see from Sancho. And I think if Sancho hits a ground running, like obviously we all want Bruno, don't we? And Shaw looks, in terms of his data, and we're going to talk about it down the line with defenders, we're going to want Shaw. So do we really want to close off the option of having an extra Man United attacker? I don't really think so. Just to touch on a point that Gabe was making there in terms of bonus that was made in the FPL Wire. See, when you look at baseline bonus. Now, it's a stat that I'm really into now. And baseline bonus, if I look at the data for last season, Melee actually ranks second, but the keeper that ranked top was Johnson from West Brom. So if you take him out of the mix because he's now relegated, Melee is the best keeper still in the Premier League in terms of looking at his baseline bonus for last season. Now, the thing about baseline bonus is it's a good stuff you do, and it's a good stuff that a keeper does in the game that adds up to their bonus count. They need to keep clean sheets. If we see the Leeds that was at the latter end of the season where they kept clean sheets, although they probably outperformed their data to a certain extent, it could bode well for bonus. Now, Dubravka actually sits third. You know, it was Johnson, Melee, and Dubravka as well. I don't really rate Newcastle in terms of clean sheets, but Melee, it could be an option at 5. Like, it could be.
I think maybe if we combine stats with, and here we have saves of shots in the box, but maybe just saves in general combined with the bonus points. And we look at Dubravka, at least saves for shots in the box, he's first, and then with bonus points, he's second. So if even when they concede, they could get you bonus points. And that how many, like, some of the most magical game weeks last season was when I don't even remember how the game week went, but Martinez would get, like, he'd concede 2 and get a bonus point or 2 and be like, this is amazing. Like, but it's only 3 points.
John makes a good point in the chat, and it's a point that I kind of touch on myself when I'm talking about bonus, and it's that at Leeds there's competition for bonus points. You know, Bamford, Rafinha definitely, because he creates a lot of chances within games. So while Melee's got that baseline, clean sheets are hard to predict for them. When they get the clean sheet, is it going to be in a game where Rafinha's maybe going to not haul? It's, you know, you're nearly better getting a player in a team that they don't really have any good outfield performers as such, you know, but the keeper has a good baseline.
Yeah, interesting. I'm just going to very quickly touch on the 4.5s, and of course, unfortunately, the top ranked 4.5 on my power rankings has had an ambulance quite recently in Dubravka. He was, he's ranked 6th overall, and clearly looking quite interesting. Saves from shots in the box first. Bonus points over 90, I think second, points in the last 6, fourth. I'm just trying to read across here. Over the season, points per 90 first. I mean, to be honest, obviously he didn't play a full season, but I think that does show that if you can unearth that 4.5 gem, then it is clearly a very, very interesting place to go. Now, as I've already mentioned about Sanchez, and I'm not going to repeat what I said, but he's down bottom half, as is Gaeta, Darlow, and McCarthy's right down there. Obviously, we haven't got the stats for the other 4.5s because they haven't got the information. We've spoke about Backman very briefly, but I want to touch on going for a goalkeeper from a promoted team. Hibbo is 4.5 and a 4, as we've said. Probably if you're doing that, that's a risk. 4.5 to 4.5 may be options.
Maybe I don't think I'll take the chance on Backman out of the blocks as a 4.5, 4.0. I know Anthony Chung's mentioned it in the chat about going, say, Backman and Foster, and you have a bit of backup, but then somebody made a very valid point that if, say, the match is called off with COVID, you lose both your keepers, which is fair.
Yeah, I'm not sure games are going to be called off with COVID this year.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
It'd be interesting. I would imagine a lot of the players are all vaccinated as well now, but I'm not seeing any data on that. But let's keep COVID in mind. We can't ignore it. So there we go then, guys. So best options from my perspective: Martinez at 5.5, Melee at 5, Dubravka if fit at 4.5, Sanchez alternatively close to Gaeta, and then forget the rest. And Manchester United. If you fancy it, by all means, but I tend to agree with Hibbo. I can genuinely see me having 3 Manchester United outfield assets in my team and want 3 Manchester United outfield assets in my team at some stage during the season.
Mario, question for you.
I was going to say, have you got anything you want to just wrap up, Gabe?
Yeah, a question for you after going through this exercise is, I know you had started the season very much with your eyes fixed on Sanchez. How has the landscape changed for you and your drafting and your tinkering?
A lot.
Yeah.
Heck of a lot. This, to me, this has been almost, it's I said to you the other day, it's quite stark how just ranking players and just comparing them, taking all the noise out and just looking at just straightforward rankings and then deciding which parameter is the most important for you, how it focuses the mind. To me, I am cooling rapidly on Sanchez. I think I will be on a 5 million keeper.
Interesting.
And I think, and we're going to touch on it later on now as we get into defenders, but Sanchez offers a lot as a 4.5 in Brighton, and do you necessarily want to double in Brighton? Maybe not.
No, I mean, we'll talk about Lamptey.
Yeah.
So, okay, right, let's crack on. We need to get on to defenders because that's the big chunk.
So that was the introduction.
Yeah. My notes here say finish goalkeepers at 40 minutes. We're only 20 minutes over. I love it. Anyway, who cares? As I say, come back with an extra coffee and watch it. So, okay, let's go on to defenders, and this is where we're going to start again with value. So let's look at this slide. So these are shortlisted defenders from the shortlisted teams by value. Okay, and what we're seeing here is that this is not just over. Well, this is over the season. I have to stress. Okay, so what you can see there is you've got the players, the price, the amount of time they've rotated, the points they've scored, the points per 90. Extrapolated points, just the points, and that's extrapolated points if they played a full season, if they with this rotation, etc. And then it comes to a point per million at the end. So looking at this and taking into account that tops teams, okay, and it doesn't include the likes of Wolves, West Ham, and Everton. There's many caveats, but I think there's some quite reliable picks. I think this is what I would term reliable picks, lads. If you're picking from these seven sort of teams, I'm not sure if you're agreeable with me. So let me just run through. We've got Wan-Bissaka 26.2, Dunk 25.8, Diaz 23.7, Holding 23.3. That's PPM, points per million. Stones 23.3, Chilwell 23.2. White 23.1, then looking further down, Robertson 23, Cancelo 23, Maguire and Shaw 22.5, Alexander-Arnold 21.3. There's some pretty consistent value in there, chaps. The players which stand out for me, Holding 23.3, White potentially 23.1, Veltman 21.3. Fofana, one of the pre-season interesting thoughts, right, quite a long way down at 15.8, but with 34% rotation. 5 millions, we've got Dunk, Tierney, Bellerin. Dunk 25.8, Tierney and Bellerin not really there. And the 6 million ones, we'll come on to the 6 million ones later, because I think we're going to talk about Manchester City and Chelsea in particular, but Diaz the best value. Any early thoughts on this?
Go ahead,
No, I have a few points to make in the next slide, but not in this.
All right, so let's move on then. So now let's put all the defenders in by value, and you can see that there are other options there. And the key thing about value is the amount of rotation that they. So you are basically it's the nailedness side of things when it comes to value. Cody now 4.5 is a reasonable value. Target now Target's right up there. Cresswell heads the whole lot at 27.8. Target 27.6. Mings, Kufal, 25.6. You know, basically you're seeing Villa starting to come to the fore for a defensive value pick, in my view. Why? Because they don't rotate them. Guys, what have you seen?
Just looking at the picks that you have there, like you're talking in terms of Cody at the 4.5s. As a pick, he really wouldn't be for me. He's not very exciting.
No.
If I look at like his data, like from the season going by, I think per 90 he had an XGA of like 0.04 per 90, which is fairly low. And like if you're looking at the options within that 4.5 range, if you're looking at say somebody like Luke Ayling instead, if you're looking at his XGA per 90, it's like 0.14, although he never managed an attack and return. So you can spin that narrative two ways. You can say either underperformed his data and that's conducive to future returns, or he was just simply crap. Now, I think one caveat of the data for like Luke Ayling when we look at last year was that he was quite often switched to centre back. So that data for the 0.14 XGA combined includes a lot of games at centre back. I think this season we're going to see him more right back. I don't think he's going to be Stuart Dallas, but I would rate him higher than say Cody.
Yeah, that's it. As I say, I'm only looking at it from a perspective of value. Just the metric that was starting with his value, right? So we've looked at fixture difficulty. Now we're looking at value, and then eventually what we'll do is we'll come to your numbers, which is the production side of things. So I think but I mean, look, the point I'm making about value is a value pick is a fairly nailed pick. That's the simple way of looking at it. So value, in my views, the value teams, the value certainly West Ham, Villa, perhaps a Lewis Dunk of Brighton if they do return their forwards. Yeah, don't worry, Tom. I know Cody's dreadful. Yeah, and then we've got obviously, but you can just look at the amount of there's 3 Villa players in I think the top 10 there. 3 Villa defenders in the top 10 with respect to value. So okay, now let's look at the last 6 games. So what we're doing now is we're saying, right, if we extrapolated, if we just got this and then just turned this into a full season, this is what would happen. Nat Phillips, a quite incredible 35.7 ppm. It's madness, right? Absolute madness for the shot. You know, it's crazy. It's I think completely unsustainable. So let's move on. Holding
over the season, that Phillips would have scored 196 points. Oh, Jesus.
But this is the point.
Oh, that's got me.
No, but this is why you have to look. This is why when you look at data, and I've deliberately left this in, because this is where you look at data and then you've got to cut through it. This is where you look at it and you go, oh, wow. And then you go, what? 196 points? What are you on about? But interesting enough, look at Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold, both over 200 points. Their form improved a lot. Chilwell, again, another very, very interesting option here now. So, you know, if you're talking, you know, Trent and Robbo here, by value, you've got, I think you've got Trent over Robbo. Robbo over Trent, 30.7 against 27.3, interestingly enough. Chilwell 21.9, but with 37% rotation. So if he's nailed, his value flies up. Do you see what I mean? So this is where what you'll do is you'll look down, you'll go, and when you come back to this, and I suggest you do come back, and this is probably the slide to look at, or one of the most important slides today, is you look at this and you go, right, what could have happened? For me, this is where it becomes interesting. Look at Chilwell, for example. Very, very interesting player there. Okay, let me keep moving, because I want to now just talk about all players. And there we go. And there's the next player who has all of a sudden leapt to the front of the list with respect to value if you took the last 6. And Luke Dean could be a 200-point player if he carries on at that run rate. So, interesting.
Where's Holgate?
Where's who?
Where's Holgate?
Holgate? Oh, I don't know. He's nowhere to be seen.
I just asked because 2 Everton players jumped to the top there.
Yeah, and no Holgate. Interesting, Godfrey. Yeah, I mean, that's boring, isn't it?
Holgate's a great player.
It's going nowhere.
But look at this. So let's talk through this. We've got Dean at 36.5, Godfrey 36.3. Well, yeah, okay. Nat Phillips, as we've said. Kufal 31.7. Ailing 31. There we go. That's the interest in Ailing coming out, in my view. It's a lot of it's based on the end of the season. His value, you know, his numbers were pretty good towards the end of the season.
Should have been a goal. It should have been a goal.
So 8, yeah. So I mean, look at that. But again, look at the rotation. Fairly low rotation. Chilwell for me stands out, as I've said. I've already mentioned that. But no. Basis the recent games, you know, the players with the most potential for an explosion will be Dean, Kufal, Ailing, Robbo, and Trent, in my view. That's
Can we talk a little bit about Chilwell and do we expect him to be rotated more than a third of the time? And if he's not, how that affects his ranking?
I mean, look, the first thing you'd say is that it's a straightforward percentage deduction with respect to the value. So you can extrapolate this out yourself. You know, if you think he's 20% or 10% is going to increase, is 31%, is it 37%? So let's say half of that, what's that? 18. So, you know, you'll see at 18, but that'll half, or you'll get half a benefit there. So, look, from my side, I think it's going to be very, very important whether Chilwell is more nailed. I'm not a Chelsea fan, but I'll be honest with you, I'm very interested in Chilwell this year. For me, very, very interested. I think he's potential for a breakout season there for sure. Hibbo, any views on this? I mean, like you say, some of these numbers are completely unsustainable, but you know, there's a few interesting green slots in that extrapolate zone. Look, Chilwell 209, Trent and Robbo 222. You know, Dean 201, like we've said.
No, well, like say you're talking about look at Dean, and he does have nice fixtures to start. Like you're talking about Southampton at home, Leeds away, Brighton away, Burnley at home, Villa away, Norwich at home. There's chat that James Rodriguez is maybe going to either go to La Liga or AC Milan, and if he does, he's got a fair share of day of balls between corner kicks and set pieces, and that's Dini's bread and butter. So I think if Benitez tightens up, which is what we think, he's going to play a more pragmatic style of football. We've touched on that earlier. If he does that and Digne has more day of balls, I think he looks good value at 5.5. I am hot on Digne, to be honest.
Yeah, interesting. So, okay, so let's look, just to sum this up then. So between 4 and 5, my value picks are Kufal, Godfrey, Target, and Ailing. And Dunk has been unfortunate on the basis of Brighton's late form. You know, Cody does have upside at 4.5, but he's boring. So let's just ignore him. Because, you know, yeah, let's zoom for that. Right, okay. And for 5.5 to 7.5 million defenders, my value picks are Dean, Robertson, Cresswell, Wan-Bissaka, and Alexander-Arnold. Chilwell, I left off on the basis of the rotation. You can see there that Chilwell and Cancelo are 6th and 7th, but their rotation is quite big. So I've left them out at the moment. Shaw is a bit further down. These stats, the value stats, don't benefit Luke Shaw, and I'm surprised, guys. I can't quite work out why. I've double-checked the numbers. I know on other stuff he'll pop out, but value he doesn't seem to. Don't know why. Any thoughts? Was he
just the sample size maybe, or like
I remember owning him at the end of last season and getting very frustrated that they didn't do. They were conceding a lot of goals and this, that, and the other. And I think when he was playing, it didn't do very well. So maybe
Wan-Bissaka get an attacking return, maybe one towards the end as well. I'm uncomfortable with Wan-Bissaka in that top 5.
Look, that's value. Doesn't mean to say it's production. This is just one aspect, right?
I don't see Wan-Bissaka as good value.
No, I wouldn't own Wan-Bissaka in a month of Sundays. I would never own him.
Interesting. No, it's fine. But this is the numbers. This is what we're doing. We're looking at it from different angles. If people like value, they might like him. Because value-wise, he pops out. I'm not saying he's the right pick. But what I'm saying is, from a value perspective, he is. So Dean Robertson, I think Dean Robertson, Cresswell, like I say, Alexander-Arnold and Chilwell. You've got maybe Shaw there. Not so sure about Diaz, a bit further down. But I think we're coming to the similar sort of players, aren't we? But now let's look at one other aspect. Let's look at what might have been. So ignoring rotation, injuries, and everything else, and extrapolate, these are more in the punty territory, and I'm not sure that, with our golden rules, whether we should be focusing on players coming back from injury. But James Justin, I'm not sure whether he's going to be fit for the start of the season, and he haunts me. Absolutely haunts me from last season. 101 points and missed 40% of the season. 4.4 points per 90, 33.4 ppm. It's insane value if he's fully fit and gets a run. The next one, Masuaku, 70% injured, 3.8 points per 90, 143 points projected. Lamptey, 74% out, 3.6 points, 135 points projected, 30 ppm. And 8 Nori, 59% rotated, 3.5 points per 90, 132 points projected. 4 players I've just mentioned there, guys. We've already spoken about 8 Nori, so let's just talk about these other players. Where are you on players coming back from injury, point 1? And secondly, where are you with those 3 players I've mentioned?
No, well, I'm okay with players coming back from injury. Now, I know Lamptey had a hamstring injury and it was fairly severe, but I think he's an interesting case because in terms of durability, there's a bit of issue. He only played 11 games last season, but he's now fit. He started 11 games last season, but he's now fit for pre-season. Now, in terms of his XG, expected goal and assist per 90, he's the best for defenders in that kind of range between 4 million and 5 million because he's got a 0.23 against that metric. So when you compare that with what Brighton can potentially do defensively, is that classic case of multiple routes to points. Potentially, he stands out as a good pick, but his durability would be an issue possibly.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. What about? So did you mention Masuaku? I was just looking at something then.
I wouldn't touch Masuaku with a barge pole, if I'm being totally honest with you, because I know Cresswell's there. I don't know how nailed he is. Yeah. It wouldn't really be for me. No. Who was your other one? James Justin?
Yeah.
Great pickup for whoever bought him last season at 4.5 million. They started. He's an example of a punt working out. I didn't go with him last season because I thought he's going to be very short term. Pereira's going to be back. I maybe didn't research my information enough to know that Pereira's issue was going to be slightly more long term. But I think there's going to be a bit of competition with Castagna maybe at left back. I know Pereira can play the right back, so I don't think just James Justin's going to get it all his own way, even if he is fit.
No, it's interesting, but we're still homing in on similar. We're still homing in on similar players. I mean, look, when there's mention of Kufal, no mention of Kufal. Yeah, I mean, or Sufal, 28.7 ppm. Is value and he's 10% rotated. So there's value in these players. There really is. I think there's a lot of value in the 5 to 5.5 million defenders. Personally, I like that. I like that price point. If we look at 5.5 and above, and this is where it becomes quite interesting. All right, it's not really quite so much punt territory, but we've got. I'm trying to think of something new to say. Two shell tennis, and pep roulette. I don't know. There's some outrageous value in Man City and Chelsea players if they play, but we cannot discount the fact that they don't always play. So what you've got to have is in my opinion, is a very good is a bench behind it to be able to protect yourself. And the important point here is if you're looking for players like this, you don't want players who are subbed on. If they're not starting, they've got to stay off. the pitch, and then you've got a decent option behind it. So let's look at these players. Stones, first of all, 5.5 million, never subbed on or off within 22 starts, 6 points per 90, potential value 41.2, incredible value. But of course, that's when he's on the pitch. But Mendy, we could nearly ignore him really in some senses, but 5.5, it's an example. Subbed on twice, off 4 times with 13 starts. 5.9 points per 90, 41 ppm. Big risk. Cancelo, 6 million, subbed on once, off 3 times within 28 starts. 5.4 points per 90 at 37 ppm. And Diaz subbed on once, I should say, and off twice within 32 starts. Lowest average points, probably the safest pick, 4.5 out of 9 points per 90, I should say, but the lowest value at 28.4. I'm just going to cover Chelsea, and then I'm going to just open this chat up in general, chaps. Chilwell, never subbed on and subbed off 5 times within 27 starts. 5.5 points per 90 at 34.6. Rudiger, 5.5, never subbed on or off within 19 starts. 4.9 points per 90, 33.8 ppm. James, 5.5 million. And I know there's interest in Daniel in James, Reece James. 5.5 million, subbed on 7 times, but never off in 32 starts, but only 5 starts, 1 sub, come on once in the last 6. Okay, so maybe that might be changing, but he's 4.3 points per 90, 29.4 ppm. And then we've got Dave Azpilicueta at the end with 6 million price, subbed on twice, off 3 times within 26 starts, 4.6 points, 29.4 ppm. So what we're basically saying here, what I'm saying here is, from my perspective, and I'm not sure whether you agree with me, I'm quite interested in John Stones. Slightly cheaper, but doesn't seem to have that subbed on problem. And that then allows me potentially to have somebody sat waiting in the wings if he doesn't play. I also like Chilwell for that reason as well. What's your views, guys?
I'm actually going to touch on this in my section, so I'm not going to comment.
All right, that's fine. Do you want to come in?
There are a couple mentions.
Great planning, boys. Great planning.
There are a couple mentions of Cresswell in the chat, and one thing that's I thought was a good point about Cresswell is he does create opportunities. He's on set pieces, so he is he does get some bonus points when they do keep a clean sheet. So he does have that added value. He's pretty nailed as far as I know, as far as I guess his age will allow. And then the question is whether they're going to play 3 at the back or 5 at the back. And I think he might be better in not as a wing back, like in the left center back of a 5. So that I think Cresswell is interesting, definitely one for the watch list. I think Stones is it's a lot of uncertainty for 5.5, and we were talking about there are good options at that price with attacking returns as well. I say that obviously after Stones is coming off a historic attacking year.
Only because you didn't get John Stones' attacking returns last season, young man.
I got him.
Did you?
I got Stones I bought Stones at 4.9 last season.
Why you so down on it then? I mean, John Stones. For me, I love him. I think he's a great option at 5.5. That's just me, but only because I'm thinking I want to perhaps be onto a Manchester City defender for these clean sheets early doors. Or I do think there's points to be had there. But I do like. I mean, for me, as I say, the other one I really like is Chilwell. I'm just not sure I'm going to be able to get to him. That's the issue there. Look, let's move on because I want to bring Hibbo in on the production side of things and on the numbers, and we're at 129 already. So Let's keep going, and then we'll try and tie it all together at the back end. So, all right, so that's the value side of things. Now, what we're going to do now is very, very quickly, I just want to announce something. And before I set you off, Hibbo, on the stats side, I'm sure you want to plug the opening FPL Compass show next Tuesday night, 9:30, with Tom Stevenson. I think he's in. Is he in? I'm sure he's in.
He has been
in. I know he commented on Cody going, at FPL_Badgers9. Yeah, I mean, Tom's, Hall of Fame #2.
On both Scout and Premier Fantasy Tools. His record's amazing. I think he's got 6 top 10Ks, and in the last few seasons he had he had ranks in around 1,000 on 2 of the seasons, and he came 375th in another season. So I think we can learn a lot from him. We're going to chat to him on Tuesday, and we're going to kind of try and get on the nitty-gritty about what he does to be so consistent, really.
Yeah. And also, you've asked for, on Twitter, you've asked for some teams, to have a quick look. I know we've got quite a lot.
There was a lot of replies that are definitely not all going to get on, but no, they're definitely not, because the idea of the show is that it's not going to be kind of rip my team heavy. It's going to be very quick through the rip my team, maybe a few discussion points on certain players, but Tom's the meat and the sandwich, so we have to give him the time he deserves.
No, totally. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be you and Nima doing it, because it's in the UK time zone, 9:30 Tuesday night, to launch the Compass show. So guys, please don't miss this one. Particularly if you're in Europe. If you're in Asia like me, you'll be watching it in the morning with a cup of coffee. Just going to make sure I've set the system up so you don't ring me in the middle of the night and say, Chris, I'm working.
I think I'm going to delegate that to Nima, so if there's some balls up, I can basically blame him.
Right, okay. Let's go to defenders then. Hibbo, are you going to start with the cheap defenders?
Yeah, we're going to look at the defenders in the 4 million to 5 million.
All right. So let me
your power rank and range, really.
Yeah. Well, let me put it on the screen, and then you can talk about it with your other numbers, and you just cross-reference if you'd like.
Yeah, 100%. So this is a table. So we basically pulled this data down from Fantasy Football Hub. So I write for them. Shout out to the hub. Now the data that I dragged down, it was stats based per 90. We looked at the season, and we kind of cleaned it up a bit. So we removed anybody that had less than 10 starts and stuff like that. We removed any relegated teams. We removed any players that had left the league as well, or anybody that we felt it was like a non-option. So in this table, we actually removed Serge Aurier because we don't really think he's going to be an option at Spurs this year. So if we look at the data, Lamptey, obviously, he ranks top, and that's largely due to the fact that he's got this dual threat. So he provides both a goal threat and creativity, and now in terms of combination, expected goal and assist, he has a 0.23 rating for that metric per 90 minutes. Now, while Ben White's left and he was playing right centre-back, we touched on this earlier, Veltman's going to come on there. They might be a bit shakier defensively, but in terms of ball progression, I rate Veltman. When we look at the fixtures, Lamptey's got Burnley away, Watford at home, Everton at home, Brentford away, Leicester at home, and Crystal Palace away, so it's a good first 6. Kufal is coming in second place at West Ham, so he was a very good pick late season. Cresswell was obviously a very good pick early in the season, and the baton was passed from one to the other. I kind of think I got their ownership the wrong way about. I owned Cresswell earlier season, I owned Kufal earlier season, Cresswell late season. But in terms of combination, expected goal and assists, Kufal has a very impressive 0.22 per 90, which is very good. He's got a decent share of free kicks, so he takes 0.27 per 90 as well. And he's got good fixtures, decent fixtures to start. Newcastle away, Leicester at home, Crystal Palace at home, Southampton away, Man United at home, and Leeds away. And at the price, I think he's benchable at 5 million. Bellerin comes on third in your rankings. He's been linked away from Arsenal. I don't really want to touch them too much because I know Holden's there at Arsenal is at a 4.5. I think Ben White's going to come in at a 4.5 obviously as well. So I think there's better options there. Richie of Newcastle, he's a 5 million defender. I think that's maybe all we have to say on him. he can play out of position midfield, don't get me wrong. He does have set pieces. So, like, in terms of corners, he can take 2.53 per 90 and free kicks 0.78 per 90. I don't like them for clean sheets, and I'm not really dying about Newcastle defence. Mazuaka, I touched on him earlier. I'm not sure I trust him. I do like West Ham's defence. I do like their fixtures, but if I was going to pick an option, I would definitely pick Kufal for the extra premium of 0.5. So I wouldn't recommend him. In terms of the last player I want to touch on in this price bracket, I'll speak about Lewis Dunk. So I think Dunk's interesting because he doesn't have the durability issues that Lamptey has. So, okay, you have to pay an extra premium. You have to pay the extra 0.5. These guys have a good defence. They've got good fixtures. It comes with goal threat. So you're talking about his XG per 90 is 0.13. And in terms of what he did in terms of goals, he had 0.15 per 90. So it translated across the goals. He has a very healthy baseline in terms of baseline bonus. You guys know I'm a fan of this. So his number per 90 was 13.87, which means if he keeps a clean sheet, he's good for bonus. And when we think about Brighton as a team, who else in that team is going to get the bonus? It ain't going to be Maupay. Put it that way. So this is why when you see 60 minutes hit and you're looking at wherever you look at your updated data, live FPL, you see Dunk jumping up the rankings in terms of bonus. So I'm very keen on Dunk. I think he's a good option. And I think he takes away that kind of risk potentially of durability and maybe the outside chance of rotation with Lamptey. You can hit your next slide, Ashley, for me, Marner, please.
Okay.
So it was a similar exercise. So we did this during the week. It's hub data, cleaned up. This is per 90 stats based over the season. We took out any player that had 10 or less starts, I think it was, and we force removed a player in Alonso because Alonso's per 90 data is like completely off a wall. He's unbelievable. But like,
there was some interesting head shaking going on, I think, on both sides of the world.
I have these like scars in my body from owning Alonso last year. Like I did this thing where I tried to be super clever and own Alonso, and it just really didn't work. And I didn't have a lit wild card, so I was kind of stuck with him. But no, I think we'll touch on the main players here. So like if you're talking about say Trent Alexander-Arnold, he had a dip in form in the last season compared to his previous two. I think we're going to see a wee change with Liverpool. So we're going to see Virgil van Dijk's back. He's going to boost the defence. Virgil's in training. Alexander-Arnold's in training. Konate's been playing games in pre-season. Matip and Joe Gomez are coming back. So I think we're going to see a more solid base that Liverpool are going to play off, which is going to help them as a team, but it's going to help Trent in terms of clean sheets. Where I see Trent as, I see him as FPL gold. So he's basically the absolute definition of multiple avenues to points. So he's got division leading numbers in terms of both threat and creativity. So when we look at season data for Trent, he ranks first amongst defenders in this sample per 90 for shots, 1.63. In terms of big chance creation, 0.42. In terms of combination XG and assist, 0.33. And baseline, 16.7. So stats are absolutely unbelievable. I'm very keen on Trent. I think Cancelo's interesting, and it's kind of going back to the point that you were making earlier about, say, rotation. Players that threaten rotation. So, shot-wise per 90, he gets off like 1.37 shots per 90 minutes. In terms of his combination XG and assist, he has 0.32, which is just slightly behind Trent. He obviously comes with a tag of rotation. So if we look at him last season, he started 27 games. He was subbed on once. But I think, I'm going to caveat this a bit, he didn't start any of the first games because he hadn't really phased his way into the team as such. So he's maybe not as much a rotation threat as we kind of think, but with a price tag at 6 million, do we really want that risk? And this is kind of what you were touching on earlier about, say, Cancelos of the world, your Chilwells, your Reece James. You couldn't have too many of them in your defence at the one time. You're going to need a solid fourth and fifth defender if you're having these boys. And if you're having two of these boys, it's going to be maybe a bit of a risk in the fact that you could end up down to two defenders in a given week. Your FDR obviously likes him a lot. Where I sit personally with Man City is full respect to the FDR, but I'm kind of thinking I might wait Man City defence until game week 8 because I think there's a fair uptick in their fixtures from that point on. The next person I want to touch on is Reece James. So he's my pick of a defender that could potentially explode, but I'm going to caveat that with minute and fixtures. So again, when Tuchel took over in game week 20 for the match against Wolves, from then, Reece James started 12 games, so there was a bit of rotation there. He subbed on, just bear with me to check here, he subbed on 6 times as well. So there's that risk that if you have Reece James, you might not necessarily get an auto sub, for example. The FDR likes Chelsea, but again, it's similar to me for Man City. I think there's a fixture swing which is fairly significant from game week 7. And if I was going to jump on Chelsea defence, that would probably be the time for me. But if I'm looking at the players in the sample statistically, James ranks 3rd for shots per 90, so 1.33. He's got some set pieces in terms of corners per 90, 1.25, and free kicks, 0.27. And his combination XG and assist is 0.22, which is fairly impressive. Now, he also boasts the second best baseline bonus score in the sample, which is 16.16. So, again, are Chelsea a team where there's other players in the side that are maybe going to deny him bonus? I'm not really so sure when he plays because we saw a few times last season Chelsea were like a 1-0 kind of side. They might be different this year. Any thoughts on Reece James?
I mean, he's clearly got a lot of upside. I think for me, I'm just not quite 100% sure. As like I say, are we gonna have that horrible issue of missing out on those? You know, the clean sheets. Chelsea are pretty good at clean sheets, right? Yeah. But are we going to miss out on those if he's subbed on? Or I doubt he'd be subbed off and lose it, but it's possible. But you know, coming off the bench is a bit of a risk for me. But I do like him a lot. I think he's an exciting pick. But I tell you what, I don't know if you noticed, but I was sat nodding when you were saying about having that strong 4th and 5th, and don't have more than one of these risks, risky players. I think that's probably the most sensible thing I've heard this pod.
So,
sorry, go ahead, Gabriel. No, go you ahead, Gabriel. Go ahead.
I was going to comment on Reece James a little bit in that his one I don't know where he's going to play at the end of last season. Tuchel, he played him at right center back and played famous Dave at right wing back. He probably should switch them around, but I think that's an unknown that we need to consider. But I will say I like Reece James a lot, especially at the price point, especially in that first matchup against Palace, where Palace has conceded the second most chances from their left side, so that would be Reece James's side, and they've also conceded the second most crosses from that side as well. So I think Reece James could explode early on in that Palace fixture, and if we're looking to gain value in players early on, he could be a sneaky pick, and I think there's value there. But then there's 2 difficult fixtures. But Chelsea, best defense in the league. Maybe there are no real difficult fixtures for a defense like that.
Yeah.
But and then the other point I wanted to make really quickly on Liverpool. I wrote about Liverpool last season. I think it was game week 2. And their defense wasn't good, and that was with VVD and Gomez. And they had problems where I remember the Trent on one side and Robertson on the other side, they'd find themselves deeper than the 2 center backs, like some really fundamental defensive problems, just in their positioning and their shape, in the way they react to balls. Remember that one counterattack I think it was Bamford that just made Van Dijk and Gomez and everybody look absolutely ridiculous. I have 2 Liverpool defenders, and I'm thinking of 2 Liverpool defenders, but that I am a little bit worried that they have some more systemic issues.
Yeah, I tend to agree about the Liverpool. I do have 2 Liverpool as well, and I'm going to attack this block of fixtures, and that's how I see it. But I'm just going to I'm going to move on here and go through another couple of players within this sample, because they are the kind of premium level players where value exists. Now, Andrew Robertson's the next one. So he was obviously the top scoring player in the FPL last season, but he didn't hit the heights the same as Trent as the 2 seasons prior. One, the drop off in kind of creativity, and the other was the drop off in clean sheets. So, as I previously said, I do think Liverpool are going to improve a bit. You've made your points there where like you're a wee bit tentative on that, Gabriel. But I think if we see the return of clean sheets, I think that bodes well for Robertson because he ranked third amongst the defenders in this sample for baseline bonus. And we see, again, when the clean sheets added, Robertson he like jumps to 9 points whenever we're looking at live FPL. He also ranks second amongst defenders in this sample for corners per 90 minutes, so 3.16. Huge on multiple avenues, the points. And if a defender's taking corners, I'm all over it. He's got a combination XG and assist of 0.24 as well. Luke Shaw looks great value at 5.5. We're seeing stories during the week, so there's a bit of concern about the Rub situation. My gut feeling this is that it's pre-season bollocks. I think.
Say as it is. Hashtag say as it is.
But they're talking about Luke Shaw. He's going to come back and he's going to have a fitness test. These boys always have a fitness test when they come back. And like you look at him in the final against Italy, he was hairing up the line like I had never seen him in my life. And they're saying, I've had a bruised rib before and I haven't been able to breathe. There's no way. Like, you know, I think he's going to be fit, but yeah. I think there's enough of a lag here that we're maybe going to see him A, back in training, and B, playing a pre-season friendly before the season kicks off.
He doesn't look injured in Mykonos drinking cocktails on a yacht.
Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, a few people do. Come on.
Well, he hasn't got a bandage on. He hasn't got a bandage on because he's got his top off.
I think it's nonsense.
I agree. I think it's nonsense. And even if it is true, if say he has cracked ribs or bruised ribs, he still has a month to rest. He's at the top of his career. He's never played better in his life. He's going to want to keep that going. I think it's nonsense.
But like I'll touch on the numbers for sure. So like in terms of his, he posted the best per 90 numbers for corners amongst the defenders in this sample, so 3.29, and he was also best for key passes per 92.44. He's a combination XG&A of 0.23 and a very solid baseline score of 15.69. We spoke about this last year, that the United clean sheet, it very much boded well for Shaw jumping up the bonus rankings. And we saw in your analysis a couple of weeks ago, Gabe, that Sancho and Guerrero at Dortmund were a very good combination. And it looks very much because Rashford, they're chatting him, maybe having a shoulder operation, that if that's the case, that Sancho could start the left-hand side. And if it does, it could bode well for Shaw in the overlap. Chilwell comes on at 6. Again, Chelsea like to rotate. He started between game week 20 and the end of the season, 11 matches. We know Alonso's there. He's fairly reckless as a defender, so... But what I will say is that's a position in the team that I think Tuchel likes to keep fresh. So similar to James and similar to Cancelo, don't be building a defence around too many of these defenders that are going to rotate because it's going to end in tears. What I will say about Chilwell, he ranks second among the players in this sample for assists per 90, 0.24, and he had a good combination XG assist of 0.323. Cresswell, he posted the best numbers for free kicks in the sample per 90, 0.79, and actual assists, 0.31. And he had a great combination XG of 0.21 as well. Digne, we touched on previously. Now, I think Digne is going to be a good pick on the fact that Benitez is maybe going to tighten him up a wee bit. And the fact that he was already fairly dominant in set plays. But I think if James Rodriguez leaves, he's going to see a bit more benefit there. I think looking at, say, Everton, Richarlison's away at the Olympics. There's a chance that he's not going to start maybe the first couple of game weeks. Benitez has made some kind of weird comment about he's going to pay it back there, so he's maybe going to be laid off for a while. As I've already said, I think Jaime Rodriguez, I think he could be gone. Now, what I would say is last season, I think when those players missed out for Everton, I think they were fairly poor, and I think in the first couple of weeks we could see a fairly kind of pragmatic defensive approach by Everton. So it could go well for Digne. I'm fairly keen on him too.
Apparently your chair needs some WD-40 according to Bungle. Okay.
Yeah, the chair and my joint. I don't know if it's the chair or my knees. It could be anyone.
I actually said it's my joint.
I was thinking it's my joints. I've had 5 knee surgeries.
Hibbo, shall I just move on to this Trent and Robbo comparison?
Yeah, do it.
Slide there. I mean, what I want to just say on that is, I you know me, I don't often look at heat maps. I look at numbers rather than heat maps. But one thing I noticed was that Robbo 2019-20 against 2021, he was further forward with respect to his heat map in 1920 than 2021. That to me looks like that might be the Virgil van Dijk factor. I don't know whether that's something that you guys would agree on, but I just thought it was quite interesting. He certainly seemed to be further up in the preceding season with respect to heat maps than last season. But I'll let you, that was just my throwaway comment at the start. I'll let you come in on just do the comparisons, and then let's just throw this open for another 5 minutes or so, and then let's get out of here.
I want to comment on that throwaway comment, because I don't think it's throwaway at all. I think it's a really important comment. Virgil van, what he does well is he switches the point of attack so quickly and so precisely. That was Liverpool. That's what they missed most last season. They had nobody. They had no pivot that switches it the way Van Dijk does. Now I think Thiago Alcantara has that ability. Thiago Alcantara.
Oh.
He has the ability, but I don't think Klopp employed him in that way. He would check too closely to the ball, so when he'd receive the ball, he didn't have room to open up and ping it to the other side. Now, so I think from an attacking perspective, the Van Dijk coming back is very important.
Cool, fantastic. At least I've got something right then today. I don't think many people like me value stuff.
No. I think the value stuff has merit. You know, it's like everything. Yeah, I think as you say, you have to it's a piece of the puzzle, and you have to challenge it and think about it yourself and decide.
I'm only joking. I love it, but no. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about how and what I like about this and the way we've done this today is that we've literally considered all different aspects, and we're literally pulling apart all of them. But look, this Trent and Robbo or both sort of argument is probably a brilliant way to finish the show. So, Hibbo, do you want to just run through this?
Yeah, so I'll briefly explain the graphic on the screen, and then I'll just talk through me slight narrative on it. So, like we can see, these are stats per 90 again. They've been dragged down from Hub. So, if we look at XG, Trent comes out the top. Expected assists, Trent's also a top. The combination, he's also top. Key passes, he's top. And big chance creation, he's also top. Now, what I will say is, I think it's important to note this. I think if we split the season in half last year, Trent, it's very much a tale of two Trents. So in the second half of the season, we're talking, say, game week 20 to game week 38, Trent's chance creation increased by 0.86 per start, and his chance creation increased by 0.86 per start, and his big chance creation increased by 0.42 per game started. I think he wasn't in great form at the start of the year creatively. And then whenever, I think at one point he was dropped because he was giving a lot of balls away. And I think he got a bit of a rocket up him whenever it was coming to the Euros and he upped his game. So I've seen a bit of him in pre-season. I know Tom Stevenson had shared it during the week. He smashed a lovely ball at the bottom corner, and I think we're going to see a different Trent. But where I stand on Trent and these Liverpool defenders, honestly, is I want both of them. These players have all had it looks like they're all having a full pre-season. We've got Van Dijk back. We've got the additions in defence. The guys that were playing midfield last year that were dropping back, like say your Fabinhos and your Hendersons, if he's fit, these boys are going to be given the licence now to go a wee bit more forward. And at 7 million at the price point there, I'm looking at, say, Robertson, compared to the options in midfield. We'll talk about midfield, I'm sure, in weeks down the line. Sarr looks good. Harrison looks good. Rafinha looks good. But on around that 7 million, I think the field's fairly narrow. And if I'm being totally honest with you, do I look at those guys and think they've got the potential for 200 points? I think that with Robertson, if he can produce the creativity which he produced, say, in kind of VVD seasons, which you're talking about, Gabriel, And also in terms of Liverpool being tight, because there were years where Liverpool were super tight and he wasn't as creative, and there were years where Liverpool's tightness dropped off a bit and he made up for it in the fact for his creativity. He's got it. It's multiple route to points. And the way I'm looking at it at the minute is potentially a back four with a Liverpool double up.
Yeah. I think I just put a couple of comments up, and John Chappell, I don't know if you saw it, but made a great comment. Every man and the dog will have Trent. The only benefit from Liverpool defence will be having Robbo, or a second one if Van Dijk's fit, perhaps. But
I know it's something Tom Stevenson's keen on because he's made a few comments as well. I think he maybe likes the idea of a double up, and I know 4-4-2 on paper maybe looks a wee bit weird. And like, you know, whenever I make my FPL teams, I look at 4-4-2 and I think, how boring looking is this? You know, but I don't know. Like when you're talking about, say, the value price points, like a defender at 7 million, whenever you divide down, say, their points from last year when they scored 160 points, they're never going to be a good pick value-wise. No. But if they had 180, 190, 200, it's a different story.
I think you could make the case for the 4-3-3.
I think so too.
Yes. No, I think you could, because there's, as I say, you know, for example, Brownhill, I shouldn't have said that name because everybody's going to have him in the teams now. He's been on my radar for ages. 4.5 nailed, nice, lovely little pick to sit there and just come on if everything goes to shit.
My problem with 4-4-2. My problem with 4-4-2 is there's no playing 4.5 striker.
Right.
No,
and you can have Brownhill, you can have Basuma and play, say, a 4-3-3 and manage it in terms of your team. Yeah. And we're looking at, say, maybe still the COVID situation and self-isolation and stuff. And I still think you're going to want to play on bench. I'm not keen on, say, 4 million non-start defenders. I know everybody's, who's the 4 million? Don't be boring yourself about that nonsense. Just no, but there's so much value at like Ailing at a 4.5 or Lamptey at a 4.5. I don't know why people are bothering their arse talking about who's the 4 million defender.
As much as I would love it to be Matty Pollock, who's gone to Watford from Grimsby, it won't be. So I'd be very surprised if it is. So no, I agree with you. This is the point with dead spots in the team, and I think, you know, we've got to be very, very careful about that. As I say, at the start we had Brandon Williams, and didn't we, as that 4 million defender that very quickly disappeared from the chances. So yeah, I think it's been a great run through. This I really enjoyed it. And Hibbo, I mean, look, thanks for the detail which you've gone into with respect to the production, as I call it. I think it's absolutely essential, and I think the debate around Liverpool in the chat, and I've just been catching up with it whilst you were talking there, is really first class. There's clearly a massive amount of thought going on, and some real FPL brains in here tonight. Some
good finishes on there. You're talking about John, 14th last year. Grady had a great finish. Tom Stevenson, champ as we call him. But, you know, no, it's great to see the same faces coming back every week.
Yeah, fabulous. So there you go. So we've gone through that. We've touched on fixture difficulty. We've gone through the value picks as we see it, whether you agree with it or not. And then we've finished off with the production picks. Take your pick. We're not spoon feeding. We're not going to tell you who to go. All we're going to say is, what's your bag? What do you like? What do you prefer? Gabe, anything you would like to just summarize, just to finish off on this whole section?
No, I don't think so. I think it's been pretty comprehensive. I agree that the chat has really been high level. The really great ideas going around. So thank you everybody for joining. And we're up to 38 likes, which is our likes has been more than the people in the chat kind of since Hibbo kind of set everybody straight. So
it looks like we've got one or two. I think we've got one or two attack dogs in the chat as well. So hit like.
Nice.
I love it. But no, that's wonderful. Right, we're coming up to 2 hours. I think it's about time we got out of here. I think as usual, there's just a few things to say. First of all, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it's very late across there, Hibbo. As always, I just noticed there was a bit of perhaps a nice little drink just poured there just to relax.
Just kind of moved it out of the way, we says.
and Gabe, you know, I mean, you're fighting flash floods and goodness knows what's out there, and your house is leaking and everything's going wrong, but you're still on the show.
Here we are. My house is leaking, my chair is creaking, but the show must go on.
And the show does go on. So, guys, thank you very much, lads. So, guys, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, hit the bell for when we're coming back, because the next show on Tuesday is unmissable. Tom Stevenson, Hall of Fame number 2, with Hibbo, with Nima. Hopefully it'll work better because I'm not on and I'll be asleep, but I might even come on the chat if I wake up. Hibbo at Hibbo_FPL. Find us on Twitter at FPL Lens. Find me at FPL Mariner. Find us on Instagram at NetThatHall. All this wonderful graphics which you're seeing here is all done by the man from Derry. The absolute class stuff, man. It's really good.
I thought you were going to call me a clown.
And he did. I knew he did. And the class.
Turn clown into class.
I don't know why.
That was well played.
The coffee. Anyway.
He's blaming the coffee.
He's the camp comic. Tiny high. But not many people will know that.
Show's ending the way it started.
Show's ending as it started. Disaster.
We got our little beers.
Join us on Tuesday, 9:30 in the UK with Hall of Fame Tom to hopefully help you net that haul. And with that, we're just going to say cheerio and see you next week. Bye-bye.